Hello, and welcome to today's video short presented by Axiomatics Federal. Today, I'm going to be demonstrating one of the best features of attribute-based access control, or ABAC, and its ability to go beyond identity-based attributes for making fine-grained access control decisions. Specifically, in this video, I'm going to discuss using an environmental attribute to make an access control decision. But first, a little bit about attribute-based access control. ABAC allows for dynamic externalized authorization by taking advantage of not just the attributes of a requester, but also the attributes of the resource being requested and the attributes of the environment. It's important to note here that this is a resource-centric model for performing authorization. After all, it is the resource or data that's being protected. We can create digital policies or rules that reflect your agency's policies to define how we want this data to be seen or edited or deleted and so forth. And then we pull attributes from the requester, resource, or environment to process these policies. For example, let's say that a data steward has a collection of data that he or she only wants to be viewable if the time is, say, between 5 a.m. and 12 a.m. locally, just during the day. For whatever reason, the data steward decides that no one should be accessing the data during the middle of the night. This is an example of an environmental attribute, time of day, that is being used for an access control decision. This decision is not at all based on the identity of the user or any other attributes of the requester of data. So ABAC does not have to be tied to an identity. Let's see an example of that. Here I'm going to go into my VM where I am running Axiomatics Services Manager. I'm going to log in and we're going to take a look at the policies or rules that I've created to protect this hypothetical collection of data that I only want to be viewable during the day. I'm going to go into my policy management section in my policy editor, and I'm going to view a collection of policies and rules that describe this data. Now here are a collection of policies and policy sets that further clarify the access control for that data. But today we're going to focus on this policy right here, the data access policy, in which I have got a rule that says return permit allow the data to be accessed if the current time is between 5 a.m. and 12 a.m. local time. That is the time of the server. And here we can see that I am putting in a condition into this rule that does a check on the time of day. So going into a simulation tool that we have running locally on my Linux VM that we call X-Ray at Axiomatics Federal. This is what they call in ABAC terminology a policy enforcement point. So this is the entity that is calling to the policy decision point, the decision engine, to determine if the request can be permitted or denied. For simplicity's sake, I'm only concentrating on subject and resource in this example. So for subject or requester, I'm using employee ID of Alice. And for the resource, I'm saying that she wants to access document A123. So I'm going to send an authorization request to my policy decision point. And you'll see that in this request that I sent for Alice and document A123, I got back a permit. Okay? And that is, of course, because the time of day is 1:02 p.m. However, let's see if I can simulate changing my system time to 2 a.m. So here I'm going to set my system time for 2 in the morning. And now I'm going to go back to my policy enforcement point, and I'm going to submit this request again. And this time I got a deny based on the system time being 2 a.m. What's interesting to note here is that I have not used or changed the policy. I've not changed any attributes about the requester or any attributes about the document. In this particular example, I'm only changing the attribute of an environmental variable, and that is time. Environmental attributes can be very useful in determining who can access what data. For example, you can use such attributes as network or IP address range or geographic location or whether someone is trying to access data from a desktop, perhaps at the agency, or maybe a mobile device within their home. The important takeaway here is that in this particular example I've shown, the identity of the person is irrelevant. Now, we can use identity for making more fine-grained access control decisions. We can use top attributes such as role and so forth. But in this instance, I didn't even care about what the identity of the person was, because the data steward put a rule into effect that said no one accesses this data at this time. So this concludes this presentation. If you have any questions about attribute-based access control, please feel free to reach out to us at axiomatics.com. Thank you.